Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to TGAT Revit. I am Thomas Garvin. Today we're going to take a fairly exhaustive look at dimensions, okay? So this is Revit Fundamentals. We're going to start at the basics and we're going to work our way through dimensions. By the end of it, if you're paying attention, you should have a fairly good understanding and knowledge of dimensions. Let's go. Right, let's create a dimension first. Okay, how do we do that? We can do that in a couple of places. We can go to the Annotate tab and select Aligned Dimension, or we have an option above the ribbon for Aligned Dimension here. If this tool is missing and you don't have that above your ribbon, if you go to this little drop-down menu guy here and select it, you just need to select it from this list. So it's Aligned Dimension. Make sure that's ticked on. So I select the Dimension tool from above my ribbon, and now I have options. I can either tab to find the place I want a dimension from using my tab button, and or let's say I can select from this list here. This is the preference. We should have this set right. So it's set to face of core. In this case, because I'm in low resolution, okay, I'm gonna set it to wall face, okay, and then it should pick up the wall face rather than the core face or the center of the core. So wall face to wall face, pull it out, click to drop it, escape, escape. You can of course create a running dimension just by selecting dimension, pick your first point, pick a second point, and then without exiting the command, continue to another point and as many as you want, okay? And then until you click out and escape, okay? However, if you already had a dimension there, so let's say I have a width here, but I want to, instead of starting again, I want to split that dimension into multiple parts. I only need to select the dimension, and we have a tool here, edit witness lines. So select that, and then select the point you want to add to your running dimension. So there, and I'll click out, escape, escape. Okay, and you can do that for as many points as you wish. So far, we've been placing our dimensions from point to point, okay, running along a wall or within rooms and so on. And that's fine, that's what you usually do. But there is an option for an automated dimensioning running along an entire wall. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so place dimension, again, dimension tool above the ribbon is fine. And then up here, just under the ribbon, we'll see an option for individual reference. That's what we're doing at the moment. If we change that to entire walls and then come down and select the wall, voila, you get a dimension running along the wall. Okay, let's look at some of the properties. So select your dimension. I'm going to edit type, and you'll see we have a whole lot of different properties for this dimension, okay? Now, before we get into changing properties or creating new dimension styles and so on, I just want to have a quick look at the global properties, okay? So that's the line weight, right? Is 1. What does 1 mean? And 4 for the tick mark line weight. 4. What does that mean? So that's driven by global properties that affect the whole project, okay? I'll also take a look while I'm there at tick marks. So we have lots of options there with arrows and fill boxes and all sorts of things, okay? If we want to create a new one, and these are the same tick marks that we use for leaders in text and tags and so on. So we'll take a quick look at where that is and how to do that as well. But let's just exit out of this, out of the properties. So cancel and go to the Manage tab. All right, and in the Manage tab, we go to Additional Settings, click the drop down, and I'm looking for the global settings. So I'm going to go to for line weights. Sorry, so line weights. Cancel that, and the first tab that appears is global settings for line weights in geometry. Let's say that's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for annotation line weights. So it's the third tab. So by default here, 1 represents 0.05 of a millimeter. 4, which we had, was 0.2 of a millimeter, and so on. So that's what those numbers correspond to when you assign them, okay? Now, you could change these values, and it'll change for your annotations across the board in your project, okay? And if it's in your template that you're changing it, it'll change for all future projects from that template. Now, that's fine. You can do that, but just make sure you know what you're doing first, okay? Okay, we'll just cancel out of this then, okay? Okay, back again in the Manage tab, Additional Settings, click the drop down. This time I'm going down to Annotations and Arrowheads, okay? And this is where we get our leader arrow types, okay? The full list is in here in this drop down. It's a list of types. And within each type, you have some properties depending on what type of one it is. If it's an arrow, then it has an angle. It'll have a tick size. That's the size of the arrow, let's say, and the arrow style. Okay. Now, you can duplicate any of these and create a new one with different dimensions and different properties. Okay. Now, I'll go into detail on that on a different video titled Annotations Text, I think it was. But I'll put a link in the description and you can go and check that out there. Okay, your Revit project and template has default measure units set up, okay? And we access those through the Manage tab in Project Units, okay? Now, I'm not going to change any here. I just want to show you that they're here. And when it refers to the default, this is what it's referring to. So you can change this and it'll change the default in your project or template going forward, okay? So anything here that's measured is here. I'm only interested at the moment in length, okay? So that's set to millimeters, as you can see, and it's set to 0 decimal places as a default and no unit symbol shown, okay? You can change these and it'll change the default across the project. I'm not going to cancel, but I will refer to this later. Okay. All right, let's go and take a look at some of the graphical parameters of this gentleman here. All right, select the dimension line and edit type. Okay, we're going to look at some of these uh, properties under the graphics heading. Okay, one by one. Maybe not all of them, but we'll hit a few. Okay, so the dimension string type, continuous. You're probably not going to change that actually, but just to demonstrate, if I change it to baseline, you won't see a difference now. I need to add more segments to the dimension. I'll show you that in a moment. If I change it to ordinate, you'll immediately see the difference. Okay, so if I apply that, what it does is it gives me dimensions at the end of the dimension at each end, and if that was continuous, it would go on. Okay, so I'll change the type to baseline, and I'll show you how that works. So if I create a new dimension, I'll pick the edge of my wall. Let's say I'll pick this wall, and here's where you're going to see the difference. I'm going to pick that point and then that wall. You see what it does? It separates those dimensions. Okay, and there's a little grab handle there if you want to widen it or shrink it. That's what it is. I guess there's uses for that. I've never used it. Okay, back into edit type, and I'll just change that back to continuous and apply. All right, select your dimension and back into properties. Let's look at the leader type. So a leader is if you pull that dimension off of the dimension line, it'll have a leader or not. So the leader type here is set to arc. The option is arc or straight line. Arc is better. I'll show you both. So arc selected. Okay. If I select just the text, whoops. If I select just the little dot under the text, I should say, and pull the text out, that's the leader line, and it's an arc. If I edit type and change that to a line, you get that result. I think the arc is better. Okay, back to arc. Okay, and I'll bring it back in to its origin. There we are, and edit type. Right, the leader line can have a tick mark on it, or let's say an arrow, if you wish. I think that's a bit cluttered, but you can. So the leader tick mark is set here to none. If I set that to, let's say, 15-degree filled arrow, and before I go out, I'm going to change one other property. So the show leader line when text moves is set to away when the text moves away from the origin, you show leader line. You have another option there where it's beyond the witness lines. So these guys here, then it shows the leader. Okay, so I'll change it to that so we can see what happens. Click OK. So if I select, I did it again, select the dot and move the text, no leader line. Okay, but if I move it out beyond the witness line, now we're getting the leader, you see? And we have the arrow on it. We can have that on, we can have it off. I think the arrow is probably a bit cluttered because when you want to use this, it's a dimension in a small space. I think it's too cluttered, but that's up to you. Okay. So edit type, I'm going to turn them back off. So arrow filled, change that back to none. And I'm going to go witness lines away from origin. Apply. Back in our properties, I'm zoomed in here so you can see the extension line, the witness line, and the tick mark. Okay, so where were we? Okay, tick mark, diagonal 1.5 is what I've selected. Okay, so if you check that list there, There's a whole list of different ones, diagonal 1.5, filled box, filled circle, bunch of different things, okay, different arrows. You can choose any of those, okay. I've got 1.5 here diagonal. I'm going to change that to 3, okay. Maybe some of you might prefer that, okay. Now, I do cover in a different video, it's the annotations text, something something. I'll put a link in the description about how to create your own tick marks or arrows, or basically you're editing what's there, making them bigger or smaller or whatever. You can do that. Okay, so diagonal 3. Now the line weight is the dimension line. Just change that to 5 so you see that change. Okay, we don't want that. Leave that at 1. Okay, so you want on your drawing, you don't want the dimension lines to be heavier than the geometry or the drawing. Okay, tick mark line weight refers again to the tick mark. It's 4. Let me just change that to 2. Apply. We have the dimension line extension here, okay? That's the distance from the tick mark and beyond. Probably maybe the same or half the distance of the tick mark. I'm going to change that to 1.5, okay? Okay, that looks a bit better. Witness line control. Okay, that's controlling the witness line and how it relates to the element you're dimensioning. Okay, so it's set to gap to element. So that's that space between the element and the witness line. It's set to gap to element is 1.5. So let's say we change that to 3 and apply. It'll double the gap to the element. Okay, so I'll put that back to 1.5. Apply. Then the witness line extension. That's the extending above the dimension. Okay, or outside if it's vertical. Again, I'll change that to 3. You'll see a change up here. Okay. Now there is another option. At the moment, as I said, it's set to gap to element. You can change that to fixed dimension line. Okay, so some options grey out and some become available. So witness line length is set to 5. So that's the distance from here to here. Okay. If I change that to 0, it'll be fixed to there's none. Okay. I'll put it back to 5 and apply. And if I change the witness line extension to 0, apply, it gets rid of the extension above. Okay. So I'll put that back to 1.5 and I'm going to change it back to gap to element. Apply. Okay. We could put an arrow or a tick mark on the end of the witness line. I don't think it's a good idea, but you can. Okay, and that's the here, witness line, tick mark. So it's the same process as adding this tick mark. You go to the drop-down list. It's the same list of different arrows, tick marks available. Select one, let's say 15 degrees, arrow, apply, and you get this. I don't think so. Okay, anyway, take it off. None. Apply. I'm going to skip over center line and go to color. Okay, color straightforward. Okay, that's black. If you want it to be red, you change it to red. If you want it to be yellow, yellow. The only thing is though, it changes the line and the text. Okay, so you can't have two different colors, which is, I know for some people is a bit of a problem, but that's the way it is. Dimension line, snap distance. This gentleman here is actually quite useful. Okay, so I'll just X out of here. It's set to 10 millimeters, and I'll show you what it does. If I create a new dimension, let's say I'll go from the front wall to the back wall again, and just pull it out past the other dimension. What it does is it snaps to that distance of drawing print units, I used to say. So 10 millimeters on your print. So again, it's just a useful little tool for being consistent across your drawings. Okay, so escape. One other thing I wanted to show you in graphics is there's instance parameters. So if I just pull that dot out to show the arc, I have an option. I can turn that leader off and apply. Okay, worth knowing that. So you're not stuck with it within the dimension type. This guy here, label. This is for associating a global parameter with the dimension. Now, it's a whole lot of interesting stuff in there, but we're not going to go into it. It's also available up here in the ribbon. Again, another day. All right, then, let's have a look at the text parameters. Okay, this is fairly straightforward. So width factor is literally just the width of the text. You can stretch it and squash it. So it's set to 1. That's normal width. So let's say I change that to 2. Okay, and apply. You'll see the text stretching out. If I change it to 0.5, you'll see it's squashed. Okay, so usually it's going to be 1. Okay, apply. Underline, italic, bold, you know what that is. You've used some kind of a Word document before, so I'll uncheck those again. That's straightforward. Text size, is the text size. I've set this one to 1.8. Do you know what? Generally, maybe 2 millimeters is about where you want to be at. So I could create another one for 2 millimeters. Now the text offset. I might just change the text size just to show it in action. Apply. You see, I'll change it back to 1.8 and apply. All right, so the text offset, that's set to 0.75 of a millimeter. So that's the distance from the dimension line, the offset distance. Okay, so if I change that to 1.5 and apply, you'll see the effect as expected. So 0.75, okay, apply. Read convention is set to left then up. Okay, if you pay attention to the vertical dimension there, and I change that to right then up, it'll flick to the other side. I click apply. Okay, it's just the orientation of the text. Okay, I'll put that back to left and up. So text font, Arial, there's a long list of fonts there. You're familiar with that from other writing, Word format, whatever. Text background is set to opaque. Okay, so I've put in a filled region here so you can see the effect of that. So you can see my text has a box around it, basically, that's blocking out whatever's behind it so that you can clearly read the text. Now, that's useful a lot of the time, but sometimes it's not. So there's an option there for transparent. And if you apply that, that's the effect. So you still see the text, but it doesn't block out the geometry or whatever behind it. Now, if that region was black, you wouldn't be able to see that text. Okay, I'm going to put that back to opaque. Right, so show opening height. I'll go back to in a sec. Suppress spaces. It's not. I don't think that's really relevant to metric. Actually, I mean, unless I'm wrong, but in imperial, you have your feet in inches and you have a gap between, maybe a hyphen. And if you have spaces suppressed, it just squashes those together, so it's tighter. Okay, so we won't do that here. Show opening height. I'll click that on, and I'll show you how we do that or what the effect is. Okay, you just put a dimension in of an opening. And there it is. The opening height is 1500. Handy. Earlier on in the full version of this video, I showed you where to find the default units for the project. Okay, so we're looking at primary and alternate units here. So if I look into primary units and the unit format, click into that little gray button there, you'll see everything's grayed out except for the first tick that says use project settings. Okay, that means that whatever is stored in the primary default uh, measure settings, use that. Okay, so if for this text type, for this dimension type, if we want to override that for just this type, we just uncheck that and we can change the rules here. Okay, so now we're no longer using the project settings for this particular dimension type. We can change it from millimeters to inches, whatever we want. But let's say we want to use meters. Okay, and let's say no, I'll put it back to millimeters. And I'm going to change the. No, you shouldn't do this. Okay, I'm going to change the decimal places from 0 to plus 10. So it'll never be 7,312. It'll be 7,310. Do you know what I mean? Which can be useful on a planning level of detail for sections and heights of buildings and so on. Do you know what? Actually, I might just round that to the nearest 100 so you can see the effect on the screen because there's no single digit numbers there. All right, so nearest 100. And let's add the millimeter symbol, okay? And before I go, suppress trailing zeros is, let's say if you were rounding to the, let's say 2 or 3 decimal places, but the dimension was, let's say, a whole number. If you click on suppress trailing zeros, it won't report the 0.000, okay? It'll just show you the whole number. Okay, so okay, and apply, and we go from 9,540 down to 9,500 because it's the nearest 100 and the millimeters is added. Okay, we have an option here to put a prefix and a suffix in the type of the dimension. Now there's an option to do that in the instance, and maybe that's more applicable most times, but if you wanted to, let's say it's the X prefix, so before, and Z suffix, so after the dimension text, apply, and there it is. Okay, so all instances then of that text, of that dimension would have that prefix or suffix or both. Right, so we'll skip on to the alternate units. So the alternate units are very useful for if you need to report 2 different formats at the same time. Let's say you want to report millimeters and you want to report meters at the same time, or you want to report, let's say, metric and imperial at the same time. We'll do that. Okay, so it's set to none for alternate units. I'm going to select that drop down, and we have 2 options. You can put the alternate units to the right of our default or below? I'm going to select below. Right, the alternate unit format, you click in here, is the same as the one above for the primary units. It's set to use project settings. We've explained what that is. Uncheck that. I'm going to select the feet and fractional inches, okay? And okay, and apply, and you'll see the effect. Okay, that can be very useful. I've drawn a circle here, just a 2D line, and we're going to look at radius, dimension, diameter, and we'll do the angle as well, okay, in the corner there. So we can select them, again, the same two ways as I showed you at the start. We can either go to the Annotate tab and select from here, or select the Dimension tool above the ribbon, and the options are here. So you go from the default aligned and pick, let's say, angular. And then I'll select the wall and the other wall, and there's my angle. Escape, escape. I'll do the same thing again. Where is it? There we go. And radial. So for the radius, just select the circle. I'll put that guy down there. And I'll select diameter. Select the circle again. And I put that guy there. Escape, escape. Okay, so we have 3 different dimension types here. I'm going to quickly look at these without too much repetition, because a lot of the stuff is the same as I already showed you in the earlier parts of this full-length video, at least. All right, if I select the angle dimension and edit type, you'll see that it's all the same properties under graphics and text that we went through in detail in the earlier version of this full-length video. If you're watching this in a segment, you can go back and maybe watch the full video. I think the only thing I'm going to just play with here is, because that's all, again, it's the tick marks, the extension lines, the witness lines, it's all the same stuff. I'll just change one thing, I think, the units format. So I'm going to change that from the project settings, although I could go and just change the project settings. I don't want the 2 decimal places there, so I can either do one of 2 things. I can remove the 2 decimal places, or I can suppress the trailing zeros, which leaves the 2 decimal places there if there is 2 decimal places, but otherwise it suppresses it, okay? I think in this case I'll just suppress trailing zeros, okay? Okay, and otherwise the same. Done. Okay, radius, may be a bit more on this. Select and edit type. Okay. Well, the type parameters for the graphics and text are pretty much the same as they are for ordinary dimensions, so we're not going to go into that much further. So same stuff. I'm not going to cover it again. The ticks or the arrows you can change, the line weights, all that stuff. The distance off the dimension line, the color, all that's the same. So I'll just go down. Okay, so text the same. I'm going to leave the primary unit format as it is, but I want to do 2 things actually. I want to remove the center mark, the X there. Okay. Now there's one for the diameter as well, so we're not going to see it disappear. But I want to remove that, and I want to put a radius symbol, an or, before this text. Okay, and I can do that here under other. Okay, so center mark, check it off, and radius symbol location. I'm going to change that from none to before value, and it's an or by default. I'm just going to leave it as that, and okay. All right. Did I not change that to before? After. Change that to before. Either's fine, of course. We'll take a look at the diameter dimension. Okay, I'm going. Do you know what? I'll delete the radius one just to get out of the way, and there we are for diameter. All right, so edit type, select and edit type. Again, same stuff. Do you know this time some of the properties are different though? The values are different. So dimension line extension has a value this time. So you see the way that's going to be on the circle. I'm going to change that from 2.5 to 0. And flip dimension line extension. I'll change that to 0 as well. And apply. Okay. So I'm going to skip over the rest of these properties. It's the same stuff. I'm going to go down to the bottom. Center mark, I'm going to turn that off. Apply. And the diameter symbol is already activated before. I'm going to leave that there and leave that symbol. You could change that. Maybe you could get an uppercase maybe and put it in. That's it though. Otherwise, it's the same stuff as other normal standard dimensions. Okay. Right, we have some text overrides available for our dimension, okay? For the instance of the dimension. So if I select my dimension once and then select again over the text, just click over the text. we get this dialog box. Now you've seen that a couple of times where I've done it by accident, okay? Okay, so we have the value. If you want to replace with text, it can't be another value. So 3,500, let's say, if I try to apply that, it won't let me. Revit won't let you cheat, okay? So close. But I can change that for text. I could say, who knows, okay? And okay, right? Undo. Select again, click on the text. We have these options to keep the value, obviously, but we have these options to add a text value above a prefix, suffix, or below. Okay, this can be very useful. Let's say you have a dimension of 150 millimeters from a surface to a DPC level, something like that. But you don't just want to communicate that that's your design dimension. You also want to communicate that it's a there's a minimum requirement, so it's minimum that amount. Okay, so min dot. Okay, and now you have that, and you can add that above, below, or to the right by selecting or filling in those other values. Come on, where are you? There you are. Okay, the suffix or the above or below. I almost forgot the obvious, how to create a new dimension type. Okay, this is the same as everything else in Revit almost. It's you pick one that's existing, so select the dimension. We have the dimension type here. We click on edit type and duplicate. Okay, you don't want to go overriding properties within the dimension usually. Okay, you want to keep individual dimension types so that you can apply them in different scenarios. Okay, so we create a new type by duplicating. So click on duplicate, give it a new name. I'll just change this one maybe to a 2mm text. 2 and okay. Then I'll just change that parameter value text size, change to 2mm and okay. And that's it done. Fantastic. Well, as usual, I hope you learned something and I hope you found that very useful. If you did, please like, comment, share, and you know what to do if you haven't already. You know what to do. Subscribe. See you in the next one, guys.